incredible! This is
The Grove Podcast.
Hello, my name is Tabs and welcome to episode 118 of the Grove Podcast. Now, I hope you're all doing well and looking forward to the weekend. I am indeed, and we've got a big game on Sunday to occupy our minds. So anyway, look, in today's show, we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to be diving into the physical side of football, things like from early season injuries that we're all very aware of, but also the importance of pre-season preparation. Plus, also something also very relevant today is the huge demands placed on young players, and we're seeing more and more frequently these youngsters, and now we're talking about youngsters, 15, 16-year-olds stepping into the first team. So, we've moved on beyond these senior people aged 17 and 18. We're now, 15, 16 is crazy. So, look, hopefully some really interesting stuff for you to listen to, and to help me make sense of it all, because I'm very, very ill-equipped, shall we say, to talk about this with any sense of, accuracy. We're joined by a very special guest. He's been on before and he's a friend of the pod. It's Dr. Andrew Mitchell, who is a British academic specialising in sports science and biomechanics, as well as being a lifelong Arsenal fan and endurance sports fanatic, shall we say. So bringing some real expertise and insights into the conversation. So Mitch, welcome to the show. How are you?
Appreciate it, Tabs. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, good afternoon. I'm looking forward to it. I think there's a lot to get through, isn't there? It's a really big hot topic, and there's a lot of stuff out there where, Gary Neville is making out he's an expert in his areas, and people like him, and I'm just sat there watching TV, just shaking my head. So I'm sure we'll get down to some good stuff. Yeah,
indeed. It seems like we only invite you when there's an injury crisis going on. So maybe we need to get you onto a more celebratory pod rather than when we're talking about hamstrings and knee knack and the rest. So there we go. And look, we actually had hoped to do this before the season started with the preseason element, but I think the timing about now is right. And also Mitch was having too much fun cycling around Cape Cod. So and I know which one he would rather do. So there we go. How was that? How was the cycling?
Good. Yeah, it was appreciated. It was good to get away and get a little bit of time off work and relax a little bit with the family and do some cycling. Cycled with some really, really good mates of mine out there, and also in New Hampshire for a bit. And some of those rides, I was either going up a mountain or down a mountain, so it was either absolutely exhausting going up or terrifying going down. But I did a quite good amount of volume cycling wise over the few weeks. So but obviously watching social media and everywhere else, trying to keep an eye on Arsenal as well.
Indeed, good stuff. So look, before we get onto the main topic, there are a couple of things I did want to address. Firstly, I titled this bit Schadenfreude. So which one have you found the funniest? Us taking Eze from Eze, which I think we should be calling him, not Eze from underneath Tottenham's noses, or Man United losing to second division, fourth tier Grimsby?
I'm still stuck on it. I think both are hilarious, and maybe both of them are the classic for that club for coming years. I was out for dinner during the Man United game and just was following it indiscreetly, or discreetly, should I say, through my phone. But my phone nearly jumped off the edge of the table because people were messaging me every single penalty, and then we eventually got back in enough time to watch the last few. But oh my goodness, how funny! And then the manager doesn't even watch the penalty shootout. What is that about?
Yeah, he's obviously disconnected from his team. It is hilarious. So, and talking to managers, welcome to Tottenham, Thomas Frank. There we go. This is the team this is the club you signed up for, and Amorim. Well, if he's they've got a 6-pointer relegation 6-pointer against Burnley at the weekend. So let's see how they manage with that. So, but hilarious nonetheless. And given all the grief that Man United has given us in the 90s and the early 2000s, I think we need to extract all the joy from this as possible.
Absolutely. I bet you when we play Man United at home, there'll be some inflatable haddock in the crowd. I'm sure that the sales of those things will go through the roof in the week leading up to that game.
I hope so. So there we go. And look, on the next topic, and this is a topic I think particularly close to your heart, but I think we all agree on this, is that you've started a petition to get Ian Wright a statue outside the Emirates. Can you tell me more about that, please? Or tell our listeners more about that?
Wright is my favourite player. I've been saying it for years. He's a player I'm most connected with as a youngster. And he's an amazing ambassador for the club, does a ton of stuff for the club since he's retired. Equally, he's a huge champion and supporter for the women's game widely, but also obviously Arsenal women. And I think he's genuinely a good guy. And I started it about 4 days ago, just kind of on a whim, as I was saying to my mate. Why, the top 50 players at Arsenal. There was a big a survey a few years ago, wasn't it? And it was Henry, Adams, Bergkamp, and they've all got statues. And then in fourth place, it was Ian Wright. And I'd probably argue he's the one that's done most for the club since retiring and continues to do the most for the club. So I just started it kind of just one afternoon, and then it kind of gathered pace. And then, 4 or 5 days in now, we're at nearly 13,000 people signed up, which is amazing. And 99.9% of it has been really, really super positive. I've had Man United and kind of neutral fans and not Arsenal fans message me saying, yeah, Quality's a good guy. I'm happy to support it. I had one guy say, the Emirates already looks like a graveyard with too many statues. We don't want another one, which I thought was a bit harsh. Especially because 4 out of the guys whose statues are up are still alive. So it's definitely not a cemetery just yet. But no, people have been kind of super positive from across the world as well. People reaching out saying, actually, I'm a Brit, but I'm based in France, wherever, can I vote? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely, of course. I kind of want to get to about 20-ish before I go back to the club and say, here you go. And we're moving up there slowly. It just takes a few of the kind of bigger social media people to support it, and I think we get there. We're moving up really, really well. So hopefully we can get done. And then obviously people are shouting out, and I totally agree, and giving shout outs to Rocky, and maybe that's a joint statue. And I know that might touch Ian's heart. But equally, also as a shout out to the women's team, I think there's stuff in plan, from what I've heard, to do something for the Champions League winning squad. Maybe it's a statue, maybe it's a different form of celebration, but I know they're doing something there as well. So I don't want to disrespect or ignore the women's side of the game as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it would be well deserved, and I don't think anyone would disagree. So how can people? We've been sharing on the socials, and it has been gaining traction. Where can people sort of sign up for the petition?
So, I've pinned the petition to both my X and Blue Sky accounts. So if we share those at the end of the pod, people will be able to find it, and then maybe put it in the show notes as well. But it's really exciting how quick it's gone. And if you'd have said to me, I'd get 1,000, I'd have been pleased. But to get just under 13,000 in like 4 days,
I had a look. Maybe you need to merge some of them, because I think there's already 2 or 3 petitions out there which didn't get a huge amount of traction on there. So look, if you go to www.change.org and you do a search for Honour Ian Wright, then it will come up, and it's the one that's got like the most votes. I think there's a couple with 400, there's one with 1,000, but this is the biggest one. So cool. So I think between that, I think there's enough. You'll get your 20,000. So look, as I said, if you go to www.change.org, search for Honour Ian Wright, and then sign up, and it'll be a great. I think it'll be a great thing to add to the Arsenalification of the Emirates. So anyway, good job there. And then finally yesterday was the Champions League draw. So we got to find out who we're playing in the group stages of the Champions League, and it's always interesting or exciting. Not the draw itself, or the preamble can do one. And luckily I was in meetings, so I didn't have to watch it. But we got to we got some familiar names come out of the bag, or come out of the AI computer. Bayern, Inter, Olympiacos. We've all been there, done that, worn the T-shirt. But some new ones like Bilbao, which I was surprised to see that we hadn't played. Bruges and the Kairat Almaty. We've never played them before, funny enough, and I'm surprised Kairat are actually even in Europe, considering I think they're nearer Beijing than London. But pretty happy with that. Pretty comfortable. At least we got Bayern at home. We got a chance to, pay back Inter for last year's, I think, undeserved win. And I think all the rest of it, we should do well, and we should get the required points to qualify. So any thoughts on that, Mitch? On the
there was a few. Atleti away is going to be interesting, isn't it? Because they're a tough crowd. I've been to an away game, an Inter away game before, and that crowd's pretty intense. I've done Prague before as an away game, and it's a good away game, but it was actually Sparta Prague. It wasn't Slavia, so I don't know that stadium, but as a city, it's a great city for an away game. And I don't know if you saw, but the Kairat Almaty, did you see their team react to them getting drawn against Arsenal? I looked it up. It's an 8-hour flight. it's 3,500 miles away. So it's like as near as us going over into playing in New York or Atlanta or something. So it's not an ideal flight wise. However, we'll see how we do with that, and it might be later in the fixture.
Well, no, we're playing at home against them, so we're lucky. It's them who's got to come to us.
Oh, I didn't realise that.
Yeah. No, I think we were sort of speculating beforehand, and actually, I think someone even said you can go, but then there's only one flight a week, so you can come back. You've got to stay there for a week. But no, we're lucky. I think Real Madrid have to go there. 4 clubs will have to go there, and you're right. It's a massive flight. You'll be knackered. So no, it's them coming to us. So.
Well, that's brilliant.
Yeah, hopefully they will make it a Category C game, and as many people can get in as possible. Because I think if you want to go, you'll get a ticket.
Yeah. Hopefully, that's really good. Yeah, so it's not bad draw, to be fair, is it?
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it, and I think tomorrow is when they announce when the games will be played, and that's when it'll become interesting in terms of how it fits in with our Premier League schedule. And I think even the first game coming up. Might be post City, pre Newcastle. So that's So let's see. So and then there was also the small thing of Liverpool, but look, we'll touch on that at the end of the game. We'll end on a bit of a preview of the Liverpool game. Yeah. But yeah, look onto our main topics and pre-season. What is it good for? And I'm assuming absolutely nothing is not the right answer. So look, fans. Yeah, we see it on the socials. We see the pictures, see the videos. We see the running drills, people in the weights rooms. They've got the friendlies that we play. But Mitch, from what you know, what's happening behind the scenes to build up like a Premier League body? You know, what's going on in pre-season to prepare these guys physically for a long, grueling 9 months, and how does that impact pre-season?
Yeah. So should we go through it kind of each section? So from a physical conditioning viewpoint, it's a combination of a number of different aspects of fitness. So, but in reality, it's building a good physical foundation for the season, which is things like strength, power, speed, cardiovascular endurance, agility, flexibility, if that's required, mobility, if that's required. So the difference there is flexibility is a muscle group, mobility is more of a joint, and then obviously things like core stability linked into any other issues the athlete's got anyway. So it's a whole different range of things. And I know we'll come on to it in a little bit, but they're all doing slightly different programs. They'll all be bespoke. There's no way that you and I, as two like Gabians and Big Gabians and Saliba might be doing similar things, but they'll have different injury records, different injury history. So they'll be doing slightly different things in certain areas. But yeah, and Ina, we'll talk about it again a little bit later, but gone are the days where people come back from pre-season 5, 6, 7K overweight, which used to happen, I know for a fact. And then in the old days, they just run them until they lost the weight, which then increased their risk of injury because they were 5 or 6K heavier and they were just running around. Very little kind of nutrition support back in the day until Arsene came in. So it's that kind of, it's building that base. But like I said, some of them may be ahead of other ones on their kind of endurance numbers in the endurance testing compared to others. Some of them may have come back with improvements in like flexibility, mobility, core stability, because they've been sent that to go away with over the summer. Come back, we need you to have worked on this area, whatever. So yeah, it's that kind of general foundation of physical fitness that we really want them to be getting.
And how many hours a day are they preparing training? Because there's that, you know, again, we're not professional athletes, but we've prepared for endurance events, long, Ironman and marathons and stuff like that. But so for their training, how, we would have tailored like 45-minute set on the bike, power numbers, there you go, job done for the day. But how much time are they dedicating to this, and what's the sort of variety over the period of a day and a week that they're sort of working on?
Yeah, it totally changes from week to week, day to day. It will also change if they're days leading up to a game, days post a game. So I've got some stuff we can talk about a little bit later on that. It'll also change based on the fact, has the athlete just come back from any Club World Cup, which we'll get to, or has the athlete come back from international activity? Also, is that athlete just new to the club? So they'll be starting at a slightly different stage. But then equally, they're going to have slight adaptations based on travel as well. So obviously our pre-season games, do you remember back in the day, pre-season Arsene used to take them to Austria?
Yeah, just in
And
the
they
Alps,
play
play a bunch of goats and whatever. Yeah.
They play against some non-league teams in Austria, get some altitude training, and then probably have quite a nice time out of the glare of the media. But nowadays, that's significant flights across the world. So we have the sports science team and the medical team are going to be then kind of allocating recovery time. If they're stopping halfway, they're getting them off the plane and they're trying to get them to get as many steps as they can. If they're kind of going through Qatar on their way to wherever they're going, let's say, just to try and reduce the risk of DVT or any issues like that, which the best of athletes can get if you just sat awkwardly. So the times are changing kind of constantly. And then sometimes you'll look at a training session, it looks like, they've only got an hour and a half in today compared to 2 days, 3 days before, which could have been 2 hours, but the intensity will be greater. So it's kind of trying to match the intensity for the specific drills or specific part of the session to see, is that match intensity or is it actually just building? The thing I always remind athletes is about 80% of the distance that elite Kenyan marathon runners do is conversational pace.
Yeah.
So we can build CV fitness without kind of killing people. But then the other side of it is just making sure we're giving them the spikes of high intensity, kind of make sure we're sharpening the tool at that end.
That 80-20 rule, as they sort of call it. Yeah.
100%.
Okay. Okay. And what happens? What about players who aren't able, as you said, it's like the sort of Madueke, he had to go on holiday after the CWC. Gyökeres training on his own, so he's still training, but it's not the same. And I don't quite understand why it's not the same, because why can't you train as hard on your own than with others? Because if it's physical training, okay, with tactics wise and footballing wise, that's a bit different. But Gyökeres, he said, he's glad to get his first 90 minutes under his belt. So what about conversely about those who aren't able to fulfill the programs, who come in late or whatever, like Timber and Gabby coming back off treatment? So why is how is it different for them, and what's the impact of that?
Yeah, so they won't be allowed in the high intensity sessions until they've met the standards required from the previous sessions, which could be reaching a certain distance or repeated intensity or a certain volume in a drill. And once they've ticked that, it means they're allowed to go on to the next thing. So whilst people probably have this mindset of all 28 lads all training, doing the same thing on a daily basis, as you say, it's clearly not the case. There's going to be some of them that are over there on their own. Sometimes they can get people who are joining late for different reasons to do sessions. So there's a little bit more what we call social facilitation, which is kind of you working with other people. So you kind of get a bit more out of it rather than you just out on your own. But yeah, they're all on the same race, but they're starting at different points, as it were. They're kind of, different stages to enable them to get to the point where they can actually play. And probably with Kai's injury, Victor probably started sooner than they were probably expecting. I would have guessed. I
would imagine so. Yeah, they would maybe ease him in, ease him in more gently, sort of thing, to get used to it. But no, it's and what I found interesting there, what you said is like they have to meet the criteria for the next session. So there is this, it's sort of say incremental thing that say, okay, well, this session is all about this intensity, but until you've reached that level, then you can't reach it. So that's again interesting that you had it, because I've never even. From our very amateur trainings that we've done, I've never heard of that. You just see a session, right? Do it, and that's it. Of course, and you just expect that you've got that incremental improvement in fitness that will enable you to hit that number. So, and is that just done from testing, or just again, how? So how is this all measured? How is their load measured? So they're not fatigued or injured. So it's just really delicately balanced.
It could be, like I said, it could be distance. It could be, if it's kind of something to vertical jump height, it could be a height they're trying to get. It could be how quickly they recover. So it could actually be recovering heart rate after they've done a session. But I work with a lot of athletes, and I still say to them, even some really elite world-class athletes, and I say, this session as a unit of physical activity is only beneficial if it allows you to do the next session. If this session stops you doing tomorrow's session or this afternoon's, it's a waste of time and it's actually detrimental. So they'll be really, really fussy about kind of making sure the guys have got to the correct level. And again, we can talk about it a little bit later, but everything's GPS nowadays. So if there's any running involved, they're getting that volume constantly assessed.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying they must be measured to within an inch of their lives. It's just every single metric, every single thing.
I can tell you a story. I went to visit Saracens training ground probably 15 years ago, just to kind of put it in kind of time context. And even then, every player, when they woke up in the morning, had to report back on an app that Saracens had got developed on the colour of their urine, so that by the time they got to training, it was identified whether they were dehydrated or not.
Well,
And that's 15 years ago.
No.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
it's just a really good example. And that app was so good that Saracens actually sold the rights to it with the tech company.
Yeah,
and actually, that's now spread across the world. Other teams using it. It was really clever. I mean, you literally wake up, they've already got your sleep data because you're wearing a watch that's assessing that, and they're checking whether by the time you get training, they know whether you're dehydrated or not. It's amazing.
Wow. Okay, well, no asparagus for them then, because they want to confuse things. But wow, again, a cynic might say, how much of it does it really make a difference? You know, are we? Is it just the case we're doing this because everyone else is doing it, or you know, are some things a bit over the top? So a bit like if you take the example of the Sky cycling team and David Brailsford with the marginal gains and the extra 0.1%, you know, even having your own pillow and stuff like that. What really makes the difference? In your opinion, if you're allowed to give me your opinion, versus what's okay, that's just because I don't know, just because do you see what I'm getting at? It feels like it feels like some of it's a bit okay, really.
Yeah, if there's bits that sometimes you hear, and I won't necessarily say the clubs, but sometimes you hear someone's got a new gimmick, and there was a time when a few of the Leicester players all bought cryogenic chambers to put in their houses, which are super expensive because I know the guy that sold them to them. And in reality, the club needed to buy one, and you rotate the guys who wanted to use it. You don't need one at home because you shouldn't be doing that just when you don't feel well, or when you feel like, oh, I need a boost, I'll go and have a whole cryogenic session. So there is some. I wouldn't say that's a gimmick, but if it's used inappropriately, it's actually ineffective and detrimental. I would say with a club with a turnover of Arsenal, they should be doing absolutely everything, and I know that they are, to maximise the performance, the mental health, the well-being of their athletes. And if it's tiny little things here and there, like I might have mentioned this on a previous pod, but one of my PhD students works at Luton Town, and I went to visit him this time last year. And I said to him at the end of the session, is it me or all the white guys going in the cryogenic chamber and all the African origin guys going in the sauna? And he said, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I said, do you not prescribe one over the other? And he said, no, absolutely not. I'm just happy that they're happy and they queue up. And the black guys, African origin, want to go and get boiling hot in the sauna. Great. And the other guys, the kind of Scandi Eastern European guys, were looking to go in the cryogenic chamber. And I said, and you don't necessarily think one does any more than another? He's like, not really. We're just happy the athletes are happy. I was like, fair enough. If you get that placebo effect and you keep the athletes happy, that's what I'm there for.
Well, that was I was thinking as you were saying that about the question I was saying about the monitoring and the measuring. Does it get to the point where it's too stressful for? Oh my god, you know, and it actually has a detrimental effect. And is that they're worrying about every single metric. That, you know what, I'm bloody good at football. I'm very fit, and I'm robust. I don't need this shit. And to be very basic, and I'm sure there are. Look, we're now of an age. I mean, basically at the time Arsene Wenger came in, yes, no more tomato ketchup, no more chips, just really, and it takes time to change people's mind. I guess if you see results, these sports stars, they see a result, they'll do it, and they'll do it to the nth degree until the next thing gives them a result. So, but there must also be people that are just like, I don't need this. Yeah, and they need to be managed as well because also psychologically, if you stress them too much about, oh, your urine is this shade of yellow, and they're going to work stressed.
Yeah,
so to speak.
I mean, you need to get buy-in.
Yeah,
and I think if you'd have tried to do what they're doing now to Man United's class of '92, Roy Keane would have walked out. A lot of the guys would have just walked out. So it's a waste of time. Guys. Yeah. Guys and girls in white lab coats taking my data, and it doesn't mean anything. But I think most people now are kind of bought into it because they see that the elites are doing it. If you think back years ago, Arsenal were definitely fitter than everyone else, 100%. Nowadays, even the promoted teams, their numbers, fitness-wise, aren't too dissimilar across the Prem. And that's because you've got really, really good sports scientists and medics working with the teams across all levels. So there might be a performance level, as in technical, difference between, let's say, Leeds and Arsenal. But fitness-wise, those guys are big and strong, and they're powerful, and they've got good endurance. So that it's one way that the sports sciencey, fitness, physical conditioning side of things is one way to equal the playing field. Level it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you hear that a lot now. I said, physically they're all at a similar level, and even skill wise to a certain extent. But it's just that it's going to the next level of intensity and the speed at which you can maintain that intensity and repeating those skills and so on like that. That's the difference on the pitch type stuff. If you ask someone to run 100 meters or lift X, they're all going to be roughly the same. But being able to do it and execute the skill at the same time and tactical awareness, that's where the differential lies. So, but then also with pre-season, they're doing everything they can to prepare them. And I think you said in the previous pod, it's literally you do your pre-season and then it's just maintenance for the rest of the season. It's you can't in a way get much fit. I mean, you get match fit and you get used to it. You build up some endurance there. But that's why pre-season is so important. You have to have a really good pre-season, and more often than not, that leads to we've had bad luck. But with that, what injuries are common in pre-season, or what injuries are common as a result of a lack of pre-season? So if you sort of two separate questions, because people still get injured in pre-season, what's common and why do they happen, and versus if you miss pre-season, what's likely to happen to you?
Yeah, so like I said, in the old days, it would have been the pre-season would have been kind of a slog, and it would have been overuse injuries would be the things the guys were getting. So like kind of Achilles issues, maybe some anterior knee pain, so kind of patellar tendon type issues. But in reality now, the guys don't come back too out of weight. They're even when the guys are sent away to wherever they go, Caribbean or beautiful places around the world, they're still doing stuff in the gyms. They're still actually working on their fitness. They're actually probably wearing, in most cases, most clubs, they're wearing their GPS anyway. So that loading and that data is being uploaded at the end of a training session anyway. So from thousands of miles away, the sports science team are keeping an eye on what you're doing when you're in your luxury resort in the Maldives or wherever they end up. So they're kind of keeping an eye on it anyway. In a way, the good thing about pre-season is the majority of it is not games. It's a long time, but there's only a small number of games, and we're about 7 times less likely to get injured in training than we are in a game. So the good thing about that is we're actually trying to kind of manage that, keep an eye on that, and not worry that these guys are going to pull up hurt. But then you have to balance that with the pre-season's the same for you and I if we both turn up and we're both there at the same time. But you could have had, you could be a Brazilian player with thousands more miles of flight time compared to me last year. If I'm just a French international, I've just got to go across the water to France. And equally, you could have had an African-based player who's on an AFCON in the middle of our season. So they've had a very intense period, Premier League, and then Carabao Cup. They then go into the AFCON, come back FA Cup, continue Champions League, and then Prem, and they may then go into a summer tournament. So we're all kind of starting at different stages, and again, like I said, different levels. But usually there's less injuries at training. Obviously, we've seen some which we'll get to, but it's because they're being everything is being monitored so closely. And when they're away, so for example in Singapore, etc., we know they're not going out the back and shooting hoops with their nephews come to visit, because they're literally in the hotel with kind of being kept an eye on. So we can kind of monitor them a lot more closely then.
Yeah, and just one thing before we move on to that next topic about the current injuries is that I'm not sure people realise that even whilst they're on these tours or whilst they're the pre-season matches, they will sometimes train in the morning or train in the day and then play the game. So we're like thinking, why is he looking so, why is he puffing after X amount of time, or why do we make so many substitutions? There's the obvious reasons, but also I don't think people appreciate the part of that conditioning, part of building that endurance, part of that is to they played in the morning and they've mostly trained really hard and now go and play 60 minutes. You could maybe that puts a bit of context. Well, why sometimes preseason games, or you lose a game that you shouldn't do, or you maybe aren't as on it. But you can see when suddenly they're dialing down the training, and all of a sudden they go into a game fresh, like they did against Bilbao, and they go and win 3-0. I bet they weren't training in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely, and they wouldn't have the same kind of pre-game countdown if it was a Prem game compared to a pre-season game that's Emirates Cup against Villarreal or whatever.
Yeah,
they would be training up to, and as you say, for some of the away, some of the tour fixtures, they're definitely training in the morning and then playing in the afternoon, evening. But equally, the thing we shouldn't forget, compared to going up to lovely Austria to play back in the day, it was really hot and humid in those some
Yeah.
of those fixtures, like crazily hot and humid. So that's actually going to be significantly impacting their performance as well, just because of dehydration and the ability to actually still perform at that kind of climatic conditions.
No, I remember being in Singapore once and going for a run, and I came back as if I'd just been in the shower. It's just like it's so hot, so humid. I mean, I must admit, I did run around the botanical gardens, which wasn't the best idea, but it was. But yeah. And is there any benefit to training in those conditions, compared to our English weather? Is there any benefit to having any benefit to training in those challenging conditions?
Not really. At altitude, yes, because that give you a cardiovascular response about kind of increasing number of red blood cells, etc. But in humidity, if you're not going to then play for the rest of the season, if it's pre-season humidity and then you're going to play in that kind of your normal domestic league is like that, fair enough. But in reality, no. But I think it's just kind of guaranteed. It's a combination of guaranteed nice weather, and then also it's a commercial decision.
Yeah, well, of course, yeah, that's the way it goes. So look, that's pre-season and interesting to hear what it's all about and how it works. But all plans don't always work out, and life happens, and football happens. And look, we're only 2 weeks into the season, and already are Arsenal without a number of key players, who we suffered from not having last season, and they are, and we struggled as a result. And look, we got Havertz with his knee, Saka's hamstring, Ødegaard's shoulder, Wright, no idea, and then obviously Norgaard's, I think it's a knee, and then Jesus is coming back from his ACL injury, so sort of less relevant. But for the other guys, but we're not alone here, and already I looked it all up, and from the top 6 clubs, in inverted commas, Arsenal have got 6 primary injuries, Chelsea 6, City 7, Man United 2, Liverpool 2, Tottenham 8. And then even other clubs are suffering, like, Burnley 4, Brentford 5, Sunderland 7, and it's nuts. What's your assessment of, I mean, look, I wanted to put that into context, as in we're not alone here in doing that. So, but from an Arsenal perspective, what's your assessment of our injury situation at the moment? Why do you think it's happening? Is it just bad luck?
Yeah, I think it's a number of things, and what I always tell people to do is to try and look at it as an injury catalogue over a period of time, not just season to season. So I think that's what's really difficult. People kind of say, well, right now we've got 6 injured, and Liverpool, Man United have got 2 each. But it might have been that last year they had more. So I think we need to really consider the number of games we're playing. And since Arteta took over, within, I think, 2 years after Arteta took over, I think we played something like 43 games that season. From then, that's 21-22. From then to last season, we played 15 more games, which is a lot more football. That's excluding all the international stuff as well. So all the guys are playing more football. The intensity is increasing year on year. The pressure on the athletes, the amount of kind of the fixture congestion that we're talking about is really increasing the stress, physical stress and mental stress on the players. So there was one point of last season, what was it, 11 games in 31 days or something, which...
in January, it was nuts. Yeah, it was January. It was
you were saying earlier that it's about S&C, something I mentioned in the previous pod about just maintaining. You can't work on someone's fitness in that month. You're trying to do bits here and there, but you're just trying to get them ready for the next game. So if you kind of have a bit of a day off after the game, you've only got 2 days, one of which is proper training and the next one's pre-game. So I think that there is a lot happening, and I think we could probably go through them and have a conversation about each of them, and kind of maybe look at it that way. But we know 100% that all injuries are reducing in football except hamstring injuries, which have doubled in the last 8 years.
I think to the layman, shall we say, the key thing is that we're just 2 weeks into the season, so they've had pre-season. So this is why they're just 2 weeks into the season. The intensity is not there. So I know what you're saying. Like, over a period of time is reducing, and over a period of time we're averaging about what you would expect and all other clubs. I just think it's the fact that like we said, we've had preseason. The whole point of preseason is preparing for the season and things like that. And then already, we're a number of key players down. And this is why I just think it's bad luck in some regard.
Mm-hmm.
So like so if we do look at them, so like Ødegaard, that's just an impact injury, just a footballing incident, falls over, lands awkwardly. There's nothing you can do about that, and it happens. But and if we look at him, what would be your assessment of him being ready for Liverpool? Is it a case of, look, it's an impact, take an injection, you'll put up with it, because he's been called up for the international team.
Yeah.
But just before I let you go, Arteta said he hasn't trained, and if he does, it will be tomorrow. He's doing everything he can, to make himself available. But we're going to wait and see. So how do we manage Ødegaard?
Yeah. So when it happened, because he got injured, went down, and then continued on. So at that point, to me, it can't be a glenohumeral joint, so a shoulder dislocation, and I don't think it can be clavicle, because if you fracture your clavicle, there's a thing called a step deformity where it kind of then just pops out, and you can actually go along and you can feel like a thing there. So it doesn't seem like that, and it's obviously not humerus fracture, because if there's anything big fracture, they would have taken him straight off. So it could be something like an SC joint, which is a little joint at the end of your clavicle, or an AC joint, which is at the other end of your clavicle. So it's like almost like a sprain, but of those kind of parts of the shoulder joint. It could be something like that. But with reference to the painkiller injection, that's a decision the club would make with the player. The difficulty, if you've got a shoulder that you can't take a shoulder barge on, is I'm not sure how effective you're going to be retaining the ball. If I know I can't, and whoever's playing up against him next weekend,
well, no,
it's going to be going. Yeah, it was his left arm, wasn't it?
It was his left. Yeah, I think so. His left.
Whenever he gets ball on that side, they're going to, Van Dijk's
going hard
right through him. Yeah. So it's. And again, as you say, there's absolutely no way of preventing that. Like any fan who sits there and rolls their eyes and goes, "Oh, typical Arsenal." Like, you know what? He got flat. It was actually an ankle. I thought he'd hurt his ankle, because it was actually a lower limb foul that actually caused the injury, wasn't it? So again, there's really nothing you can do that. The challenge is, if he hasn't trained as yet, as of today's press conference, it's going to be interesting to whether he's ready in time, I would say.
Well, you could imagine he's basically done a lot of sitting on the bike this week. You can imagine that, as you do with upper body injuries, is right. Sit on the bike. But even then, it's not like you can put huge power through the pedals, because you're not leaning over; you're just sitting upright. So, it also very.
It might be Arteta doing saying that he could be fit, for the Liverpool side of things. But Nwaneri must have his eyes lit up, thinking I'm going to start at Anfield. Yeah,
also, or Eze, maybe. Who knows? But yeah, it's interesting what you said about even having a painkilling injection. How much, if you can't take a shoulder, if you're protecting it, it's in your head. So, but interesting that they called him up for the international squad. So yeah, something's not right there. So, but we'll see. It's the most hopeful one of the lot.
I think Norway had previous, didn't they? Last year, call Ødegaard in, and he went there, and they went, "Yeah, you're injured," and he's like, "I told you I was injured," and then they flew him back.
Yeah, well, maybe it's the same thing then. Yeah, and that was an even worse injury, because that was on the ankle and also so we'll see. And then there was and then in the same game, Saka. I think it turns out it's a grade 1 hamstring. Arteta. I think Arteta said, how it happened. Well, he said it's an action that requires full power from him. Then he clashes with an opponent. He needs to change pace again, and he felt something, so he'll be out for a couple of weeks, which is better than we originally thought. And so in terms of what's the sort of recovery, what's involved in recovery from a grade 1, and also what does it mean for the future? He's got his right leg that he had to be operated on. Now his left leg, okay, not as severe, but there's an element of weakness there now, and that can be got at. So what's the impact on Saka and the team?
Yeah, so initially when it happened, I thought, God, I hope it's not the same leg. So about 18-20% of hamstring strains are recurrences. Okay, so we know that it's the one of the highest injuries to kind of recur or have that re-injury. And about 2/3 of those happen within about 2 months of returning to full competition. So it kind of fits into that. If you exclude the summer and we talk about full competition, that kind of fits into that zone. We know that hamstrings are about 25%, so they're a quarter of all football injuries. And that we know equally that bicep fem is about 84%, which is pretty high, of match-based hamstring injuries, hamstring strains. So it's, I mean, as soon as it happens, the team basically knows straight away what it is. The good thing is for me is that it wasn't, which we've seen before, I'll play on, see if you're all right, see if you can run it off. As soon as you've strained a muscle and there's any slight bleeding in there, any fibres torn, there's going to be bleeding, you can't run it off. If it's the last 5 minutes of your Champions League final and you're about to retire, I get it. But at home to Leeds, I think he made the right decision. People were saying, some of the world-class Arsenal FBI lip readers were saying he says to Arteta or the physio, one of the two,
it's cramp.
It's just cramp, I think someone said. But clearly not. Yeah, a few weeks, but for me, it's a thank God. It's a thunderstorm wire. For me, it's a thank God that both Bukayo and Arteta kind of made the decision straight away. For me, it sounds like there's been conversations with, we've got a squad big enough now. If you saw, get off. It makes sense. The real shame is that, I guess it's a shame. It's the sharpest he's looked since before he got hurt last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
A little bit.
And we're playing Liverpool at the weekend, and we want to go to Liverpool with our best players, and we it always seems to be these big games. There's always players missing. We struggle, but then Berta's shopping spree. This is why we did it, and I think we're going to have a bit of a different mindset. Let's not keep him. Look, it was 4-0, 3-0 at the time. Get him off. Yeah. No bother. I can see with the Ødegaard one, you'd want to just see it because it maybe it'll sort itself out. It's a bit of a twinge, and I need to. It's not run it off, but maybe again, if it's a contact thing, then you feel sore for a bit, and then it dies down, or the adrenaline carries you through. But even then, I think we're going to be better at making those decisions. But with a grade 1, I think that's what we're calling it. Is that just so? Does that bring any weakness to it, or is that like that once that's repaired is as good? Once you recover,
it should be resolved. There should be no scar tissue. He'll be getting once he gets to the stage where he's allowed massage. You shouldn't massage a new injury, but once it's at a stage where he's a few weeks in, or at least after week 1, and they start giving him a proper, not like a massage where you got plinky music in the background.
I know the one you're talking about.
The
ones that send you in tears.
Because it's the scar tissue that potentially causes the or stays in there as a weak point. They'll be all over that. He'll be doing tons of Nordic hamstring work, which is one of the best eccentric hamstring exercises. I mean, and he's so diligent. From what I know about him, he's a hugely diligent athlete with reference to his performance-enhancing S&C, strength and conditioning. So he'll be exactly the same as rehab, I've got no doubt.
Okay. Yeah, those sports massages, I used to have them like once. They are the most painful thing. And my masseuse would always go, I'm hardly touching you. Do you want me to go? No, don't go deep. Anything pointy into, they're not fun. If you've never had one before, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy sometimes. Mm-hmm. So hopefully he'll be back a week or so after the international break. I think maybe for once an international break for certain people is falling at a good time. And then last of the big three is Havertz with his knee, and not really too sure how it happened or whether he went into the Man United game still suffering, and then he had that kick from Ugarte. But I looked at that and there didn't seem to be any twist. So the only thing I saw was maybe him landing, but I didn't see him landing anything. I couldn't work out how it happened. And then he said, there's swelling. And then there was the rumours going, speculation it was an ACL, but having done both my ACLs and any physio worth their salt can tell within literally just a push and a pull that they know it's an ACL, even with inflammation. You don't wait. So that's fine. And look, we learned that he's undergoing surgery. But not too bad. So it could be worse, could be better. So maybe November. So I mean, what's your? I was going to say prognosis, but what's your thoughts on the Havertz injury? Is surgery always the last resort over rest and recuperation and non-invasive remedies?
They prefer to do what they call conservative treatment, or rehabilitation, which is not diving in and opening up the athlete, whether it's arthroscopically or any other way. Obviously, I'm not an orthopedic surgeon, but in a perfect world, you go conservative first. Sometimes you treat conservative if someone's a builder, whereas if it's an elite athlete, you kind of have to say, well, no, actually, this person's going to have more stress on their knee, so I'm going to have to do something a bit more than if you're just no disrespect to builders, but if you've got the functionality of being a builder 9 to 5 compared to being a football player, let's say. So the thing that was interesting with this injury plus Ben's and Norgaard's is that we didn't see any of it happen. So it was all kind of behind the scenes type stuff based on the duration that the club have announced, or sorry, not the club, but based on duration that is in the media. It looks to me, based on those numbers, based on the kind of rehab we know should take that long, is it is some form of cartilage issue. Because the duration they've given us when they said in single digit weeks was, I think, kind of
nine weeks. So that's I think we're saying 9 weeks as being the worst case scenario. So
in reality, it is based on those numbers. It is some form of cartilage issue, and cartilage is just a little bit kind of maybe mentioned it on a previous pod, but it has a very different blood supply than other things like muscle, ligament, and tendon has a very bad blood supply. So there is kind of a different rehabilitation speed based on the tissue that's actually injured, and so that's what the challenge is there. The annoying thing about that is that, and again, I'm not quite in specific to Havertz, but in the kind of the UEFA injury studies that we look at with all the numbers, knee cartilage type injuries have one of the highest re-injury rates.
I was just about to ask what's the, because Havertz has had an unfortunate. He was looking really sharp at being our best scorer. I think he was hitting 20 goals last season, and then from February, and now this, he's just got a year to forget, and it's such a shame because we could see over the summer, and I was going to ask you about this. We could see over the summer that he's worked on something. He's worked out. We've seen that he's been down the gym. He's bulked up his upper body. I don't think there was too many photos of his calves and his quads because everyone's too worried about his biceps and his chest. So he looked like he worked really hard in his recuperation and also we weren't going to rely on him so much. So therefore, between him and Gyökeres, we can dovetail and we have again keep our players fresh and so on. So it's unfortunate to hear that about the reoccurrence, and again, it has to be managed. But I think we're in a better place to manage it.
Yeah.
But with the work that he did do, would that have had any impact on his, if I'm using the right term here, biomechanics? But in terms of, would it have any knock-on effect in terms of how he trains or how he performs or his lower body having to adapt to the upper body?
I mean, I think 99% of sports scientists or sports med clinicians would say that if you've got an athlete who looks exactly the same but is a bit stronger, you take the stronger athlete every time because they're more robust. They can ride a challenge a bit better, being slightly more muscular. And people were making out the guy put on like 3 stone in the off season. I don't know the exact numbers. I don't want to quote wrong, but even if you put on half a stone of muscle, that's quite good in that period of time. If it was that easy to put on muscle, every kid at my sixth form college would have been walking around looking like Mr. T because they used to go to the gym once a week. It's really difficult for hypertrophy to happen and to suddenly get athletes to look that big. So it might have been a combination of, he put on a bit of muscle, he may have lost a tiny bit of body fat, which suddenly makes it all look different. And he may have gone from a medium to a small medium t-shirt or something. But I would say there'd be no negative impact for that additional work he's done. In reality, it might help his rehab that he was stronger in the first place for when the rehab process started. But it's just really, really sad when you see an athlete that's done that much in the off season to try and get in a good place, and they have a setback like this.
Yeah, and I think with the 3 injuries that we talked, so Norgaard very little is known about, Ben White very little is known about, but I think with these 3 key injuries, shall we say, that these primary injuries, they aren't recurring injuries. So I think it's just footballing incidents, and I think a bit of bad luck. I don't think there's anything that we could do to prevent these happening. So maybe last year there was a lot of potential, in the vertical blame on the club, overplaying players, bringing people back in too early, like Ødegaard when he hadn't been fully recovered. Havertz was dead on his feet. Saka plays every minute of every game. So I think, but on these ones, I just think it's coincidence, it's dumb luck, and it's happening to the same 3 players, and it's just shit happens. It just I was posting on the socials. Why can't we just have nice things that last for a while that don't break?
And I almost have it in. You could almost argue that of the 3 injuries, Ødegaard we shouldn't even be thinking about his last season injury, because it's a different body part completely. So in a way, as you say, it's a footballing instant. It's coming together. It's a tackle that I thought was worthy of a yellow card from where we were sat. But and then he falls out on an outstretched arm, and then that's what happens. The Saka one, it's the opposite leg, so we can't even say it's because of that leg. It's incomplete rehab last year.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. Is there anything either subconsciously or subconsciously, or your body? I can't remember what the word is. I've had it as when I've had one bad leg, then you put more strain on the other leg, transfer or something like that. Yeah. Would there be anything like that? So he's inadvertently putting more pressure on his what was then better leg. Just the body automatically adapts to that, and so therefore, because I know in a way, because I've got a bad left knee, that I'm more prone to injuries in my right leg, because you're compensating. That's the word I was looking for. You're compensating. It's just micro stuff. It's really micro stuff. But is there anything in that you could be compensating for?
I think if Saka had gone out and run a half marathon, or he'd run a marathon, and then he'd hurt the other leg, I'd say absolutely yes. Yeah. But because it's repeated sprints, it's change of direction, some of it's walking, landing from a jump, I think it's much harder to kind of say there's that negative kind of crossover effect. But I did in prep for today's pod, I looked through all the latest research coming out of UEFA, and that's the only good thing that UEFA do, is they do fund some amazing research across men's and women's football, done by a guy called Professor Jan Ekstrand. And I looked through every paper in the last 10 years, and I couldn't find anything that says if you've done your right hamstring, your left hamstring's more susceptible.
That noise was a thunderstorm that caused a power cut in Dr. Mitchell's house. After some minutes of confusion and reconnection, we were able to resume with the pod.
All right, we've got you back. I think a bit of a thunderstorm there and a power cut for Mitch. But anyway, so you were saying that you look through the UEFA papers from the last 10 years on compensation injuries.
Yeah, and we see it a lot in endurance athletes, as you and I, Tabs, are both endurance athletes. And if I've got a slightly dodgy left leg, and then I go out and run a marathon, my right side of my body is going to get hurt, whether that's hip, knee, ankle, even shoulder or back. But I had a quick look through all the papers, and I couldn't see anything. That clearly said if you've hurt your right hamstring, you'll increase risk of hurting your left hamstring. The increase of hurting your right hamstring is significant. The increased risk of injuring the same injured leg. But the opposite leg isn't currently there. It might just be that the numbers are so small they didn't report it. But we wouldn't normally expect to see that at the moment, at least.
Okay. No, interesting stuff. So that's So fingers crossed they come back. It always makes me laugh when they say stronger than ever. I'm not sure that's possible, but anyway, let's hope they rest, recoup, and recover, and they're back with us. And look, and they said this is why Big Berta's gone on his shopping spree. I think we're now. And also, talking of scars, I think Arteta's scarred from last season, and he's massively overcompensating for that. And I'm all for it. And we now have a squad where you got numbers 2, 3 in every position, that if any of them starts, we're the drop off is not big, and anyone would be happy. So let's see how that goes. So. And onto the third topic in this area, and this is the one I think is the most interesting one, and really sort of pertinent. Well, all 3 topics are pertinent now, but this one is, I think, of particular interest. And it's around teenagers' physical development, and the fact that they're playing first team men's football, and compared to a few years back, you would see the odd 18-year-old who'd be destined for the first team, who'd be on the bench, play a few cup games, he'd be around the squad. But now we're seeing more and more younger and younger teenagers playing in the men's game in the first team, or playing way above their age group. So, they could be 12, 13, 14, playing at under 18s, 19s, 21s, and not looking out of place. And look, we have our own Max Dowman, but we had Ethan and Nwaneri and MLS last year, 17 and 18, breaking into the first team, playing regular football, being regular and serious contributors. And then, unfortunately, you had the 16-year-old scoring the winner for Liverpool against Newcastle the other day. And I think it's happening in other clubs. And look, we all know about Lamine Yamal. So, I mean, how is this happening? Why do you think this trend is happening and happening?
I think it could be a number of things with reference to Arsenal. I think Arsenal's got the best academy in the Prem, potentially one of the best academies in the world. So I think they're doing the right things. I think it's a combination of getting the right character, because we don't seem to be bringing through any 15, 16, 17-year-olds who have got the wrong attitude, the wrong character. And I think that's really, really important. So Per and his team are doing the right thing to bring through the right kind of people. There's no one coming through that thinks they're bigger than the club or better than the club. Sorry, there's no one coming through that thinks that is still at the club.
Yeah, no, of course.
Names that have moved on elsewhere to United, been for a few of them. But I think if you look over the years, obviously Cesc was if going back to when I was, as far as back as I can think, the first really, really young guy was Cesc, and we brought him in from
Barcelona.
What was the guy that came with him? There was another.
Fran Merida. Was it Fran Merida?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who obviously didn't do as well as Cesc, but Cesc came over almost already cooked as a 15-year-old, and with that mullet and looking like looking like something from the 80s. I loved him. But no, I think it's a combination of they're getting better support from an S&C, strength and conditioning, nutrition viewpoint. They're being looked after there. And I think if we look at these 15, 16, 17-year-olds, they don't look like 15, 16, 17-year-olds.
No, not traditional ones anyway. Not like the one I've got in the bedroom next door. No.
Exactly, yeah. First time I met Max Dowman was was after the St Albans under-21 Arsenal game, St Albans City, about 6 weeks ago. And he's a really impressive character, really impressive figure, both from a maturity viewpoint, considering he's 15 and a bit, 15 and a half, whatever. Just kind of talking to people who are asking kind of complex questions, kind of, loads of kids wanting autographs, but also kind of other ones like myself, kind of having a bit more of a chat. Really, really impressive. And he physically was better built than I am. So I think he is a 15-year-old and absolutely 100% from a safeguarding viewpoint. He's still a child. But I think these guys are coming through kind of almost better prepared than you would have been 15, 16, 17-year-old if you go back to the 80s and 90s. And I think the difference is the mindset of the managers. I think very few managers back in the day would have Sam Allardyce have brought to a 15, 16, 17-year-old, or would he wanted men, And I think Ferguson obviously had the class of 92 and some of those came through, but not this young. So I think it's a really bright spark. I think if in 2 years we have none come through in an off season, we're going to be like, oh God, what's going on? The treadmill's not churning out, Hayland, what you're doing. And I think it's just we're in a golden streak of it.
We are very lucky that having three and include Saka four, for where he's come from. Hayland is producing and paying back big time. And look, if you're good enough, you will play for the Arsenal. So for those that don't, then you're obviously not good enough, and stuff like that. But with that, obviously it comes with a challenge. I mean, actually, before we get onto this, what I find interesting is the psychology of playing against a 15-year-old. Yes. So if you're a defender and you see Max Dowman running at you, you have to forget he's 15. You just treat him like a footballer. Because I bet you he's only 15. I can't go and kick him. I bet there's an element of that psychology there that eventually once he tears you a new one and embarrasses you, right, I don't give a monkeys how old you are. I'm doing it. But from a physical aspect for these youngsters, stepping into senior football, playing against fully developed adults, what's the biggest challenge for them? What is it that they're facing? What is it they have to do to prepare for that and recover from that? And just in general, and this is about their bodies as 16-year-old and that young age. That's what I mean, where it's not fully developed.
Yeah, I mean, just for answer that bit, don't forget what Joel Linton did to Max. in the pre-season. He's a proper grown-up, and he just went straight through him. But then afterwards, you saw him having a conversation with him.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest challenge, because you can be good enough technically to face these guys, but they're still more mature. They're big, grown, intimidating men who have been to World Cups, who either played in 8 years in non-league, and now suddenly they found their way in its Leeds, and they've found their way to the Prem. But equally, it could be guys who've been in La Liga academies, and they're now the World Cup winners or European Cup winners. So we can't protect Max and just put him against Grimsby Town away, which we mentioned earlier. So for me, the biggest challenge is not technically, because I think he's technically he's first string quality already, but you're competing against fully grown men. I think we will have to really keep an eye on him to make sure, where possible, the refs protect him within the rules of the game. I don't want him to get any more
special treatment
than is normal. But a few times on the weekend against Leeds, I shouted, "Come on, ref, he's only a child." But you also don't want, God forbid, to have some kind of significant injury because some big guy from Leeds or whatever has just gone through the back of him and put the guy out for 6 months. So I think the challenge,
you can't treat him differently, though.
Physicality. Well, yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? We want everyone to be treated the same, but we just want the rules to be applied fairly. And when Bakaya first came through, he used to get a lot of rash challenges, didn't he? But I think now he plays slightly differently, protects the ball slightly differently. I think these kids are still growing, and some people talk about kind of growing pains and things. Can we kind of touch on that? Is that all right to talk about that side?
Look, I posited the question. Look, we all saw last year. Like, I do want to come back to the physical side of things, but we posited. There was a thing last year, like when Nwaneri played a few games, it looked bright, but then towards the end of the season, he was on the bench, but he never came on. It was, why? Why is he not coming on? And it was posited out there that that he was going through some sort of growing pains, and well, what does that mean? And is it a real thing? And why would it stop you from playing?
Yeah, no, I would totally support that growing pains scenario. I was lucky enough to be on the pitch for the last game of the season last year, and the least happy player in the Arsenal squad was Ethan Nwaneri. He looked miserable. He kept out the way, kept his head down, was avoiding eye contact. He just didn't, bless him, he didn't look well. So the growing pains. So with growing pains, bones don't grow in the middle; they grow at the ends, kind of near the joint, in an area called the growth plate. And so while a child is still growing, these areas are more cartilaginous. So they're made more of cartilage than they are of bone. And obviously cartilage isn't as strong as bone. So high levels of stress or repetition of physical activity can cause that growth plate to begin to hurt and swell. The two most common ones is Ødegaard disease, which some of our listeners may have had, which is pain and swelling below the knee joint, an area called the tibial tuberosity, which is the bony bit, the top of which your patellar tendon attaches into. So that starts getting painful, that tibial tuberosity. And then there's an equivalent of that called Sever's disease, which is in the heel. But it's basically the growth plates being stressed. In reality, they almost never, 99.9% of the time, never have surgery on this. We just have to manage physical activity, manage minutes. And I think that's what the club do. For the majority of players and actually individuals, around 15 is when that stops. Some people do have that maturity, a final maturity development a little bit later. So saying that someone couldn't have growing pains at 17, 18, that's absolutely wrong. That they might still have that, but on average, it's around 15.
But there's always outliers. So, there's always
exactly. There's always outliers. But I think that might be something. And I think that the club managing the load, as in minutes of load, for someone like Ethan, if he's going through that, is really, really important. The difficulty is you feel your brain still feels like a Premier League football player. You want to go and play, and you look down and it's your knees or your heels are in so much pain. And in reality,
so they are in physical. He is in physical pain. So it's growing pains, and it's literally you are in pain. So he'll know. He'll know he's. But the thing is, is it something that if you played on it, is it just a case of playing through pain, or could you do yourself an injury? Well, you're an Arsenal player, of course you'll do yourself an injury. But
I mean, playing on it would increase your risk of injury because those surfaces haven't ossified to the point where it's strong bone yet. Right. And again, it would potentially increase your risk of injury. The challenge is as well is if you get kicked right on that bit, it could be really, really like properly painful. Like kind of, I think I broke my leg kind of painful because the tibial tuberosity just at the top of your tibia, the front of your leg, just under your knee, it kind of, that little bone sticks out a bit anyway. And if someone's going for a challenge and they just catch that with a boot or a stud, that could be really, really, really painful. So yeah, it's about minute modification and just trying to support the guys through it that way, which is it's frustrating for them, but we'd rather keep an eye on them now and have them available later in the season.
Of course, and look, and you say if you're saying at the age of 15, that's when it normally happens, and this is something that the academy are dealing in with hundreds of players or lots of players, so it's just par for the course, and they know it. It's just that we don't see that, and all of a sudden it becomes a prominent thing because, oh, where's Ethan? He's better than Ødegaard. What he's been playing. Why isn't he playing? And it's odd that he then stayed in the limelight. Then, so we would still have him on the bench. Well, I would have thought maybe just even to protect him, just full stop, even just call it out. It just felt maybe it's he does maybe not embarrassed by it. But they don't want to, what teenagers are like, and all of a sudden, he's growing pains, and he gets mocked for it, by idiots online and stuff like that. So I think maybe, the club are better at managing things than us or I. But it was just interesting. Yeah, it looked like they managed it really, really well, and good for them. I think we're getting a really good record in terms of how we treat our youngsters and how we develop them and how we look after them. I think. And
he played a good number of games last year as well, didn't he?
Yeah. Exactly. Up until the point, it was very noticeable. It suddenly fell off a cliff. All of a sudden, he's not getting any game time. He's not coming on, and it makes sense. And look, just back to that physical aspect of the, is it more a case as well? I heard something really good the other day. I think it was on the Arsenal Vision podcast, and I think it was about, well, you can't start Max Dowman because he just cannot last 90 minutes, and it's too much of a risk. Even 60 minutes might be at his age and all of a sudden you get injuries on the other side, and he's got to play a whole 90 minutes. That he's going to be, well, not a danger to himself, but he's going to be susceptible to injury. He's going to lose it. So I think in terms of managing his minutes, I think that's really good. But is one of the bigger challenges in terms of physically, they can develop themselves physically strong. It goes to the gym, do all the running, yada yada yada. But maybe there's body's tolerance for the physical side of things is not great, so therefore you have to manage that. So it's more the recovery and the recuperation. And he said being ready for the next game, the next session is the bigger question, not he's playing against men.
Yeah, and I think the thresholds of repeat sprint ability, the kind of anaerobic fitness that he'd be expected as a 15-year-old, he's probably world class already. As a 19-year-old, he'd probably be very highly ranked. As a Premier League football player, probably wouldn't be as highly ranked if you look at those numbers. So that's the point. If he can only maintain the levels required for 15 to 20 minutes, half an hour, that's all he should be given, because you could do, not to say damage to the player from an injury viewpoint, but you could do a lot to the kid's morale if you put him in away to Grimsby, the next round of Carling Cup or whatever, and then the lad has to come off after half an hour because he's literally run himself out. So I would always just throw these guys on and use them at the end of the game, which gives them a bit of an advantage because they're playing against slightly more tired fullback potentially, or defenders. But I think, the threshold that's expected of him as a Prem player right now, he wouldn't be meeting the numbers that Bukayo can do. But he's also, we need to remember, he's 6-7 years younger than Bukayo, and he's probably world class for his age group if you look at those numbers across world football and academy football. That physicality is, we need to remember that he's playing up so many age groups.
Yeah, it's nuts.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, but it's interesting about age 15. I guess 16, 17 is when maybe it turns, like, Lamine Yamal is playing all the time for his club and country. So, but again, you have the bell curve, you have your outliers, and maybe he developed quicker. His cardiovascular side of things developed quicker. His body's quicker. Maybe playing in Spain, living in Spain, your body is better to recover and recuperate. So I think also you'll find a lot more on the continent of these youngsters. So there's many things to that. Is there one, and we touched on this on the last time you were on about, and it was an anecdotal thing. So the 500 game limit, where players can potentially fall off a cliff, like we were talking about Raheem Sterling. And I know it's not a scientific thing, but are we at risk? Are we at risk of these players starting earlier, but then they're finishing earlier? Now, I know we've got sports science and we know we take care and all the rest of it, but sports science is going to help you when you get clobbered and kicked and on the ankles, on the knees, on the joints. Are we in danger? We introduce them early, but then their careers finish at 30 rather than 35.
Yeah. So we spoke about the 500 limit. I think putting aside the 500 limit thing, I think it's the conversations that will be happening with Max and his family before this season is an estimated number of minutes that the club think is appropriate for his age, and explaining to the lad, in 3 years you'll only just be 18, which is just, if you think about that, that's crazy. And actually just trying to manage his minutes appropriately. I think Jack Wilshere is an example of playing a lot of football really young, but Jack took a lot of contact. That was one thing for me as an Arsenal fan. I always thought Jack could have got rid of the ball half a second earlier, half the time. And I think, teaching the guy to be smart and actually working on Max's ability to protect the ball where possible would kind of hopefully reduce his risk of injury. I think the next 3 years with reference to Max until he's kind of 18, 19, or until he's hit his peak height velocity and he's stopped growing, which is then kind of when they can kind of treat him slightly differently. They would have had in place either a number of games combined with a number of minutes linked to those games, all in place, kind of having that conversation with him now so that he doesn't look up and expect 25, 30 games this year. Because the lad's also doing his GCSEs. Probably isn't allowed to even travel to midweek away games because of like school and things like that.
Well, that's interesting because we're talking about Port Vale away in the cup. Is he allowed to play? Well,
yeah, exactly. And I think it depends on what night of the week is that? Is that
It'll be a Wednesday. It'll be Wednesday 24th.
Yeah. So it's a school night, isn't it? So it's there's if you think about
but he doesn't go to school. Surely he's tutored. Or do you think he will actually put on the uniform?
My understanding is he goes to Brentwood, which is where I think Frank Lampard went, doesn't it? That was a school he was at. Or my understanding is he's actually still at that school. And I think that was from people I know that have spoken to me that is part of the kind of deal, is that the parents are saying that the education is still important. Historically, Arsenal Academy guys just come closer and kind of do stuff near the club, but. Yeah, so and great that he thinks that his parents are prioritising, and he thinks it's important to prioritise his education. I'm really proud of that. But I think you're absolutely right. There'll be a slow curve on increasing minutes and the exposure to the stress of a big scary centre half or fullback cutting you in half away at Newcastle or whatever. So I think that's really important to try and limit any risk of injury. You don't want to get an injury while you're young and you're still growing, because then the injured limb is then having to finish growing whilst it's also rehabilitating, and it just never really works out. Which athletes where possible to be symmetrical.
Which is, I think, what happened to Calafiori. I think he got his bad injury at such a young age, and I think he was still. I think it was 15 when he got it. So that could be part of why maybe he's both unlucky and susceptible at the same time. But I guess so. Then maybe we can prolong their career because we manage them properly. We don't throw them in. Unfortunately, he's not helping. In that, stop being so bloody good and we'll stop playing. It's such a hard, it's hard because if he keeps churning out performances like he does, it's very hard for a manager who are short term in thinking, even though, and Arteta's not your typical short term manager, but they're thinking about then 3 points. They're thinking about the next round. They think, and if they've got a player that they want to use to get that, it's hard. It's a real hard balance. I think we'll balance on the right side of things because I think we're a quality club who care about our players, unlike others. So I think we will do right by him. It's also moving away from the physicality thing. It's just it's managing that expectation, as you say, and managing his mindset. And as you said, it will come. Don't rush it. It will come. And even like someone Nwaneri, Eza coming in. Even when Eza's 30, Nwaneri will be 20, 21 and just about ready to like bang, So loads of time to develop, and I think we will look after them and so on. So it's I think we're in an incredible fortunate position. I think the club do a brilliant job looking after all our players, but particularly you can see in terms of our youth, in terms of the way they. you've said, like, everyone's got their tailored programs, everyone's looked after, everyone's managed, and all the rest of it. And we look after sleep, nutrition, recovery, strength training. We do all of that, and I think it's, and I think, would you say looking after youth players is a specialized subject because it needs to be tailored differently, right? So you got someone who I'm skilled in looking after youth players. Give me a man, I have no idea what to do, but give me a 14, 15, 16-year-old, I've got that nailed. Are they different sciences, to both in the same field, but different sciences?
Different aspects of the same scientific area. Yeah, I mean, you have to treat the guys completely differently with reference to the growth and maturity. Quite often the guys who are the best guys at 13, 14, 15 are just at the height they're going to be for the rest of their life. Whereas you get this kind of smaller guys kind of coming through a bit later. A lot of academies, I know in football and rugby, have two separate intakes in the academy. They have like what we kind of consider it kind of a September to December kid, and then the other 9 months. And it's quite often it's fascinating that I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, someone did a piece of research on the age or the date of birth or the month of birth of the Saracens Rugby Academy, and something like 78% was September to December. It's crazy. And the argument being is that you're the older kids in your year group at school. You maybe get better attention from the PE teachers. You get your hits of testosterone earlier. You grow a bit bigger. You're a bit better. But a lot of the guys who kind of in that next 9 month, the kind of later 9 month or 3/4 of the year, don't get the opportunities in those early academy venues or arenas because they're just not as big. But then they can carry on developing or just have later growth spurts. But yeah, it's an absolutely different area of the same kind of specialism of the sports science. But as you say, the people working with the academy boys will be a different set of people. They'll be very, very focused around academy development, physical and mental as well.
No, incredible. Look, all this fascinating stuff. I love it. I could talk all day, but unfortunately, that's not really a podcasting thing. So, but anyway, but really interesting stuff. I think we've learned a lot about how Arsenal treat their players, treat injuries, and I think we're in a very, very lucky position. And look, we're doing everything we can to be successful, and then the rest. Sometimes things have got to fall your way, and fingers crossed they do. So moving on away from that and back to the football that, as I said, takes place this weekend. We play Liverpool away at Anfield. Massive game already. But I think it's a good time to play them. Huge. So look, as we always do in this pod, I'll ask you, what are you looking forward to and not looking forward to as far as the Liverpool game's concerned?
Yeah, and when I was prepping for this, I started writing something like, I'm not sure I'm looking forward to the match, I'm too nervous. But then that would be the answer every week. No, and on reflection, I'm looking forward to see Ebbs in an Arsenal shirt with a number 10 on his back. So excited. And my old man's been taking me to watch Arsenal since I was 6, so since 1979. And when he comes to football, we talk football, but very rarely does my dad message me about football just during the week. And the other day, as soon as the story came out, he just sent me a thumbs up. And I was like, responded like, Ebbs ? Or Eza. And he's like, yeah, followed this guy for years, absolutely love him. Kind of, we need that kind of dynamic maverick. And I was just like, look, honestly, it moved me, mate. Like my dad doesn't do that on any purchase in the last 30 years of me being Arsenal. He's never gone, oh yeah, we're getting Dennis Bergkamp. Oh yeah, we're getting Mark Overmars. But Ebbs, bless him, has made, as a mild man's 82, he's been an Arsenal fan for as long as. So that's, I'm super looking forward to that. And then being able to have, watch the kind of reruns on Match of the Day and see how Ebbs does. And then not looking forward to, I think I'll probably put this on every week, but I don't want the refs, linos, VAR crew to negatively impact the game and the result. I just want the officials to be consistent and fair, but that might be asking too much. I just want consistency. If they're consistently strict, I don't mind, or consistently lax and let people do what they want, I get it. But it's when they're inconsistent in game that as a fan we get frustrated. So I just don't want them I don't want them to decide the result.
Yeah, no, I agree.
What about you?
Yeah, well, on the Eze thing, it is bizarre. As I said, I'm 52. I think you're of a similar vintage, and I want to get a shirt with his name and number on the back. He's had an impact on the club, and just his demeanour, his smile, his how joyous the whole thing is, how happy he is. Just he feels like he's a fan playing for his favourite club, and he is. He's just also bloody brilliant at football, and I haven't been this. Invested isn't the right word, but just sort of excited, as you said, by a new signing, a new player, and those 24, 48 hours, even maybe whatever's after 60. 72 hours. Sorry, my maths. It was just as wake up in the morning. You're still thinking about Eze, aren't you? It's sort of like it's not, and it's like we all become school children, all become children on Christmas Day, sort of thing. And it's fantastic. So let's hope he brings the vibes, brings the joy, and I think it happened at a right time because the Trossard announcement, which I've got no beef with, and then Havertz injury, and then the head loss. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, we're the best club in the world ever. We know exactly what we're doing, and it's brilliant. So, on top of that, with the Tottenham side of things, that's fantastic. So, I'm excited to see him too. Like, I'm looking forward to, just watching Arsenal play, and I think maybe going there and getting a win. I think that it's about time. But in terms of what not looking forward to. Well, it's the fact that we're going there and we haven't got our full strength team. I'd love to be going there with Saka fit, with Ødegaard fit, with Havertz fit, just to show up and to say this is who we are. Yeah. This is this is, and we've had it against City. Now we have it with Liverpool, and even like last year, we had a front line of Marino, Martinelli, and I can't remember if it was Sterling or not. I can't remember the third one, but it wasn't particularly. Great. So it'd be just nice to face up to them with our strongest team. It's going to be 4:30 on a Sunday. Everyone's watching. So it's just a shame that, but we'll see. So, what do you think? How do you think we're going to line up? Do you think Eze will start? I mean, or given Ødegaard's situation, What do you think? What do you think the sort of key starters are?
Yeah, that's the exciting thing about this season. With this added depth, I don't really know what Arteta's going to come up with. We were at the pub on the weekend, and when everyone's phones buzzed, and then you kind of go, actually, which set of fullbacks is he going to go with? I don't know. It depends. So I'm kind of, with the lineup announcements, I'm surprised. I think some of the decisions have been made for him. So at right back, it seems like that decision's been made as long as Julian's all right. Mm-hmm. I guess it depends whether he wants to be kind of gallivanting forward at left back with Ricky playing, or whether he wants to be a little bit more defensively now with Miles. I think Ethan replaces Ødegaard. I just think if he immediately puts Ebbs in there, I think that might be a little bit tough on Ethan. But then, I mean, do we maybe start with Noni on the right, Vic in the middle, and potentially Ebbs on the left? Or do you think he's not going to play Ebbs on the left? Is he only really going to play? So where else do you think he'd play Ebbs if it isn't in Odie's?
Well, I mean, the reason why there's a couple of reasons why we wouldn't start Ebbs on the left. One is our press. Okay, so you've got all of a sudden Gyökeres is still learning it. You got Eze, who's only been there for 4 weeks, still learning it. So all of a sudden, one of our primary defense mechanisms, you're lost. You've got only one person who knows what actually. Well, no, if you had Ebe, Gyökeres, and Madueke, no, they have all of them. So I think that's too much of a risk to do that, because also on the left hand side, that means we're defending Salah. So therefore, if you have Eze on that side. And I think Calafiori will start, because I think Arteta's a big Calafiori side. Then that leaves a lot of pressure on Declan Rice to be covering that left channel, and our back three having to shuffle across. So if Eze is going to start, it'll be in the Ødegaard role, and and he would have to be on the right. That's the only thing as well. If he starts, he's more of a left 8 than a right 8. I think we need Rice on the left to cover for Salah out there. So for me, it's going to be Madueke, Gyökeres, and Martinelli, because Martinelli does the dirty work. He's defensive. Yeah. He's actually, I think he does well against Liverpool. I think he's got a decent record of either scoring or being effective. I think I've got no qualms with Martinelli. I think people are a bit too down on him because of just what he isn't rather than what he is, and yet we all see his faults. But I think in a game like this, yeah, I think we need Nelly, and the beauty is we've got options on the bench to change things.
You can change it.
Yeah, exactly. So so I would start with Timber, Calafiori, the middle. Nwaneri, and then Madueke, Gyökeres, and Nelly. So
It's exciting.
So I see.
We got flexibility and we got options for the first time in a while, so that's positive.
That's the thing, and look, Liverpool. They've conceded 4 in 2 games. They've scored 7, and they've been 2-0 down, or they've been 2-0 up, or in the Charity Shield 1-0 up, 2-1 up, and they've conceded. So they'll be their usual danger going forward. But I think they'll be vulnerable at the back. And the one injury to Virgil van Dijk. And even against 10 men against Newcastle, they were 2-0 up and sat back and offered nothing. So very odd, very very odd. And do you have a prediction?
Well, yeah, I was kind of thinking that, and it immediately makes me think of last year when we had to give them the Guard of Honour, which I get that. That's fair enough. That just frustrated me. But then I quickly looked through the highlights of that game just to kind of remind myself. 2-0 down after 21 minutes. And then we get 2 headers to get back in the game, and then we got the silly sending off from Marino. Part of me thinks 2-2 again. I think hopefully we won't lose. I don't think we'll lose. I think we're strong enough to go there and get a point. But I'm just concerned the referee's going to get involved.
Well, he's the one that got involved, and he couldn't help himself when he sent off Declan Rice against Brighton. But exactly. It is what it is. I don't think he's refed us. Yeah, exactly. So look, this is Liverpool way. It's Anfield. It's one of the hardest fixtures in world football, let alone the Premier League. And they'll be aggressive. They'll be relentless. And yeah, if you give them a sniff, they'll punish us. So we have to respect that. But as I said, I think it's about time we get a win at Anfield. We haven't lost. We haven't lost there since November 21, but we also haven't won since September 2012, which was I think it was Podolski and Cazorla scoring a couple of goals. But that was 13 years ago, and 13 years not to win at Anfield. That's too long. That's far too long for a club like Arsenal. So. And I think defensively, we know the drill. We'll have the players. We'll be disciplined. Yeah. We'll be compact. Just don't give away anything silly. No silly giveaways, because if we switch off, Liverpool will kill us. But I think if we get it right tactically, and I think we will, we stay focused. We attack their weaknesses, and they've got plenty of those, and we leverage our strengths. There's no reason why we can't take something away. So 1 or 3 points. So and we're evolving. As I said, we've got options. We've got quality all over the park. We've got experience. We've got belief in what we're doing. And even without Saka, we can hurt them. So stay switched on, stay disciplined, take our chances, and we can finally change the story at Anfield, and we'll get I was going to go 2-2 draw, but I'll take the 2-1 win. So there we go. 2-1 win. So let's go. Look, I think it's about time. I think this is the time. They're not at their strength. I think it's a great time to play them. They're not at their strongest. We're not at their strongest. You're right. Take the refs out of the equation, play well, and away we go. So fingers crossed. As you said, it's going to be all on our minds until 4:30 Saturday, and then we won't be able to watch it because we'll be too nervous.
Nervy.
Indeed. Well, look, we've been going 90 minutes, so we better wrap this up. So look, Mitch, thank you so much. That was really, really great. Really interesting. I hope our listeners enjoyed that. Some fascinating stuff and a nice insight from someone who knows what they're talking about, which is more than people usually get on this pod. So thank you for that. So where can people find you on the socials?
So a little bit of stuff I still do on X, but not tons. So it's at Negativo Arsenal. That's all one word. And then on Blue Sky, it's at Arsenal-PhD at bluesky.social. Okay. And if there's anything coming from a professional viewpoint, I'm on LinkedIn as well. But
there we go. And look, I'll link to the petition, and I'll link to you in the various places. As I said, remember, the Ian Wright, the statue. And I'll put that in the show notes, and I'll quickly just get a reminder of what it is. It's www.change.org, and you look for Honour Ian Wright, and sign the ting, as they say. And there you go. Look, you can follow us on Threads and Blue Sky and X, and our next show will be post our win against Liverpool. And then we've got something special in the works for the following Friday. Hopefully, something a bit of fun. So keep an eye out for that. So again, thank you again, Mitch, for coming along. It was great speaking to you. So and hopefully next time we speak, it won't be because of injuries. So,
let's do one that's not injury based. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ted.
Yeah, no worries. And then I'll come and find you in the Tollington one day to buy you a drink to thank you for everything you do. And yeah, look, if you enjoy the Grove podcast, then please do the honours, like, subscribe, rate, and all that jazz. We can find us at the Grove AFC on everywhere. So yeah, great. And look, thank you for being here. If you're still listening, thank you. And until the next time, until after the famous victory after 13 years at Anfield, come on you Gunners.